Let's have a look at this as quickly as we can, get as much information into as little time as possible. Right, there's modern agriculture. Plough, you sow, you reap. You plough, you sow, you reap, you plough, you sow, you reap, you plough, you sow, you reap. Every year the sun is turning that soil and the carbon dioxide and the water into that harvest. You're taking it all away and you're not putting anything back into the soil. That's a lot of work but not a lot of result. Every year that soil's getting thinner, and every year its capacity for water holding, water retention, it's just going down and down and down. The soil gets thinner and thinner and thinner until you end up in a desert. Okay, if you don't believe me, look back through history. Look at the last 4,000 years of human history. All our great civilizations have been cereal based, been plough based, except instead of using the liquid slave, they used the two-legged slaves. And all of them, Babylon, Egypt, Rome, all ended up like that. Certain areas of France and a lot of areas of the States are ending up like that. Fast track, because the liquid slave's worth quite a lot of two-legged slaves. We can do a lot of damage very quick. Then we're going to add chemicals into it because nature keeps trying to fight back, and so we're trying to kill everything off, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. So what happens when you leave it alone? These guys come in, what you know as weeds, and each one of these guys is a very highly specifically trained technician, which is going to do a very specific job, do itself out of a job. It's not going to be greedy and try and hang on to its position and create the conditions so that it can stay there. They're quite happy to go away and work elsewhere once their job is done. So the dandelion, that soil's been compacted by the tractors and the combine tyres. It's been stripped of its structure. There's no humus left in it, and it's a very mineral, almost like subsoil on the surface. This guy's going to come in and break up that hardpan, get his roots down low because the water available has become very low, and start turning some sun and some carbon dioxide into biomass. Send off some seeds pretty quickly, and as he breaks the soil up, then the grasses come in. The grasses come in with their hairnet roots. We're looking at, I think, ryegrass, something like 120 kilometres of hairnet root per plant underground, holding that soil together, making lots of air pockets in it. And as the cow comes along and pulls on that grass, wraps her tongue round like that, round the long grass, and pulls on it, pulls on all that root structure, and that's injecting loads of oxygen into the soil, which makes room for these guys to come in and start working. She's going to eat that grass, that sunshine and that carbon dioxide. She's going to pre-digest it and put it out the back end in a little parcel of highly readily available matter. And as she's doing that, the fertility of the soil is going to go up, the capacity for holding water is going to go up, and the conditions will be created for pioneer trees and bushes. So there's two examples. Scotch broom, a leguminous little bush, can grow pretty much anywhere as soon as you cut some forest down. Next spring, look at where you've chopped down, if you chop everything down, if you don't do selective forestry, or if you see them, the so-called forestry guys, stripping the hillside of a wide band of woodland, makes it look like they've got a hair cutter, the thing for shaving your head, and run a nice big mohawk right down the middle of a very healthy head of hair. Next spring, depending on where you are, but if you're in a Scotch broom region, next spring that band will be bright yellow. This guy as well, the birch, or I should say girl, known in Druid customs as being the sacrificial tree, which is the first letter of the Druid alphabet, the Ogham alphabet. Why? Because she can grow where the bigger trees can't. You can plant a birch tree in the middle of a lawn and she'll struggle on and be able to grow. You plant an oak tree in the middle of the lawn, success rate's pretty low. Why? Because the soil in a lawn, in a grass environment, is a bacteria digested system, whereas for the oak tree and the pine tree to grow, we need a mushroom based digestive system to recycle the organic matter. And to get those mushrooms in there, these pioneer trees, part of their job's that. If you ever go out under a birch tree, they're one of the first to lose their leaves in the autumn. Go out under a birch tree and try and rake up the leaves when they fall. No chance at all of getting a barrow full. Where I live, the mayor, he planted, there's a road called Birch Alley, or Allée des Bouleaux. It's in France. I've been along there. Yeah, there's a bit of grass. There's a whole line of, there must be about 300 birch trees all in a line. Went there thinking, yeah, birch leaves are great because they decompose very, very quickly, and there's a bit of road next to these trees. I thought I'd go and scrape up those leaves and put some in my garden. No chance, hardly worth it. So the birch as well, when it does die, normally it dies because the bigger trees have shaded it out. That's why it's called the sacrifice tree in the Druid culture. When it does die, that wood decomposes incredibly quickly. You leave a birch trunk on the ground for 2 years, it's rotten. If you want to burn birch wood, if you do have to cut them down at any time, you need to get that cut, split, and burnt within 18 months. If it's in the dry, it will keep a little while. If you drop a birch tree and leave the trunk on the ground, within 18 months, you can stick a screwdriver through the wood with no problem at all. So the pioneer trees come in, they change the soil structure. We're now getting wood on the ground, we're getting more leaves, we're getting more biomass, and we're getting other animals. We've got slugs come in eating built up organic matter, hedgehogs eating slugs. We can put chickens into these systems. Chickens will then work very well with these trees to keep the parasites of the fruit down. If you've got a hazelnut, you've got fruit trees, get chickens in around the fruit trees, and we're going into a forest-based system, and that's without doing anything. I've put permaculture here in between the pioneer trees and the grassland. I know some permaculture guy I'm a big fan of. He's been working out there and doing a bloody great job of it by the looks of it. Here we're working concentrating biomass to get the water holding capacity up, and we want to be getting the photosynthesis up as well and stabilising the climate. Now, while we're looking at photosynthesis, at the top above each ecosystem, I've put in water retention graphic and the photosynthesis graphic. That's from a study done in the late 50s in America, where they've taken samples of ecosystems, like a square metre of an ecosystem, pounded it all up in a centrifuge, got all the chlorophyll out and weighed the chlorophyll, and then extrapolated the figures to find the number of kilos of chlorophyll per hectare. So these figures at the side, that's kilos of chlorophyll per hectare at any given month of the year. So this is a maize field, it's not a wheat field. Nothing. Big peak, nothing. That's the amount of sun, that field harvested, that hectare harvested in a year. Okay, it's not a lot. It looks like a big bump, but it's not really a lot. And we've got 9 months of the year with nothing, just a little bit of weed growth that you're then going to throw some Roundup on, kill it, and then plough it in and start again. And nothing's going back to the soil. That's all getting taken off and turned into silage for cows, which then being fed to humans, and the human poo is then getting treated in sewage works and probably ending up in the sea somewhere. So we're robbing the soil blind of its work. It's trying to catch as much sun as possible and keep itself a vegetable cover, and we're just robbing it blind, and so it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner, and the water holding capacity is going lower and lower. So let's start looking in a positive direction. That's the negative cycle, that red one there. This is the positive cycle. Okay, this is succession. We're going from a ploughed field to a forest, and our sunlight is being harvested and it's being turned into biomass, which is then falling onto the soil, which is getting thicker and thicker and livelier, and all this abundance is coming back to us here because we're going to know how to orchestrate it. And the sunlight of that regenerative prairie is quite low. It's actually lower over the year than the maize field. So you'd think, well, probably better off growing maize now and then thrashing it down. Well, no, because this is a system that's working on its own. Okay, this is a system that's working. Succession's making that happen. Down here, it's oil making it happen. So let's go on. Permaculture. We want stable climate, loads of water retention, loads of photosynthesis. Okay, the savanna ecosystem, which I've put above the pioneer trees. If you've got a field that's coming up from grassland into forest, nice tall sea of grass with a few bushes poking their heads out, a few young trees. We've got a lot more photosynthesis going on. The peak doesn't go as high as the maize field over there, but it's a lot longer, and again, it's a self-sufficient system. It's not having any external help to do that. That's just nature and the sun playing a game. The water retention is going up. Let's look at an oak forest. We are starting off at about 6 kilos, even in the winter. They say oak forest, but for it to be photosynthesizing in the winter, that's chestnut and hazel as well. When you scrape the bark off the young wood, you find a green layer underneath. That green layer can catch the sun as well. And we just go up straight away with no help, no petrol. We're going up to 32 kilos per hectare and then dropping down again. And all that's going back into the system. And so it's just exponential. It's just going to get better and better and better. Do you know what happens, folks? I've been doing this for 10 years, playing with this positive cycle here. Okay, that succession, that upward force taking it towards forest, that's ever present on the earth, just the same as gravity is, pulling things down and keeping them anchored on the ground. Do you ever watch a rocket go up on the telly? See how much fossil fuel they use to get something to fight gravity and deny it? Ever see how much fossil fuel we're using to deny succession? Yeah, it's just stupid. What happens here when you start using your brain, you start watching what's going on, and you start working in this direction, your whole life changes. Yeah, you're not fighting and repeating the same error over and over again and banging your head against a brick wall. Their life, I can tell you, 10 years on, life is so much easier. The amount of freedom you've got, you're not caught in the economic nets, you're not being poisoned by industrial food, you're not driving around everywhere to buy everything that's already been transported 1,000 times. And every year, your ecosystem gets a little bit better. Every year you get a little bit more time to add something else to make it better, to add another water tank, to dig another swale, to plant another 20 trees. Yeah, I just left a bit of land. It was grassland. It had had a kindly neighbour run a tractor with a topper over it every winter for the last 10 years, surrounded by trees. I left some of that for 3 years without touching it. I haven't had to buy a single tree. I've just planted 40 trees. Hazelnuts, plums, walnut. I've got chestnut trees coming out my ears, and it's all free. It's all coming from succession. So there you go. In a nutshell, that's what you need to do. Technical details depend on where you live, what you want, and how much you know, really. But all the technical details are out there. That's just as quickly as I can say it. Positive and negative, and what we're up against, what we need to work with. There you go, goodbye.